Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TechRaptor podcast. I'm Robert Scarpanito, your features editor.
Andrew Rutten, editor-in-chief.
Rollage Doggett, site founder.
Andrew Stritch, Pokemon editor.
Pokemon editor, indeed. We're going to talk about Pokemon later this week. I have some thoughts. I've actually been playing the new purple and red Pocket Monster game. And we're also going to talk about Ragnarok a bit. Otten has finished the game. We're going to talk about some kind of cool gameplay stuff that happens toward the end, or like the latter half. But first, let's get into some news. Netflix, you know Netflix? They do Stranger Things. They do I don't know, Succession. No, that's HBO.
They're the Point P devs, right?
Yeah. And I'm talking about Stranger Things, the game. That's what you all were thinking about too, right? Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Does Netflix do anything else? I just play their video games.
Yeah, the great games. So Netflix is actually working on a AAA game of some kind. They're working on a quote-unquote big budget PC game.
Can we trust them with how badly they fumbled Game of Thrones, though? Come on.
What if it's just a version of Bandersnatch for Xbox?
Ugh. Gross.
Doesn't that kind of exist for Xbox? Like if you have the Netflix app on your Xbox, you have Bandersnatch on Xbox.
You kind of do it now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The game is supposed to appeal to hundreds of millions around the world, which, you know,
hundreds of millions. That's bad news.
Yeah.
That means it's going to be some like, I don't know. They're going to make some kind of, they're like, you know, we saw this Fortnite game and we decided to make our own.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be something like that.
Fortnite number one fan Andrew Otten recommended this to Netflix.
I'm an expert now. They gave me a call and they said, "Have you heard of Fortnite?" And I said, you called the right man."
It. Yeah, I'm the first man to find out this game exists.
Right. Did you know Darth Vader and Indiana Jones can fight each other?
Mm-hmm.
And then John Wick comes in.
That's my favorite Netflix show, where John Wick and Indiana Jones fight.
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't know. This is something that is like, I still don't think of Netflix as a game company. Contrary to the jokes we were making earlier, they're still the TV show and movie company, right?
Yeah, they've been consistently saying them for a few years now. They really want to get into it because that's so they see their biggest competition for your brain, for your time is games, and they want to take that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to. I wonder whether they would build something on like a known franchise that they own, or whether they're just going to try to watch industry trends. We always see that issue with big companies following industry trends. If they're like, well, everything's hot in the gaming sphere right now. Like, you know, hey, let's put out a farming sim with collection aspects. Farming sims are so hot right now. Let's do that. There'll be some roguelite aspect in there somehow. But then once you like put in like research time and getting developers, getting the plan together, getting it through development, testing, everything, publishing, finding a good PR cycle, and releasing, they're going to entirely miss whatever trend they're aiming to hit, and it's going to fuck up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think there's also been a trend of like these big tech companies who aren't gaming companies who try to get into the gaming space and just kind of crash horribly. Google, Stadia.
That's not true at all. Name 12 examples, and if you can't, then you know that invalidates your point.
I can name 3: Google and Stadia, Amazon and New World, Facebook and the Meta Quest, specifically their whole Horizon thing that they're trying to do, Horizon Worlds.
I knew that Horizon Worlds.
Yeah, and like I know they don't want that to be a video game, right? They're not billing it as a video game, they're billing it as like a meeting room thing, but that is just a fundamental misunderstanding of VR right now.
I knew that Horizons would go nowhere just because the idea has no legs.
They do have legs now.
Is that a joke?
They patched legs in.
Yeah. Now it has legs, but can it run?
That's right.
It's currently like quapping its way across the industry.
Across the conference room. Right? Yeah, but so that it's just like these big tech companies that are like, oh, hey, video games are kind of making money. Do you see this Grand Theft Auto 5 thing? That's making some money, right? So we're seeing them trying to step into the gaming space, and it's kind of, I don't know, they're quapping right onto their faces, you know, and it's like, I'm not saying that's exactly what Netflix is gonna do. I've heard like the Stranger Things games are not that bad, but I don't know. They have a lot of like baggage to get over that's not even their own, you know, but it's like kind of just
Yeah.
that whole big tech company getting into it, right?
I think one thing they have going for them is that they have done a pretty decent job of some kind of video game adaptation stuff on Netflix, particularly anime out of games. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's something in that like Genshin realm. Honestly, they're like, oh, that's anime stuff, and the gamers seem to like their games as anime. Like if I'm thinking of some bigwig exec, like, they like that stuff, right? It might be something along those lines. I wouldn't be surprised.
You know, they should make a video game out of Cyberpunk Edge Runners.
That's right.
That'd be fucking cool, man.
Yeah, it's just like whatever trend they're gonna find. Well, I'd be hesitant to say that they would do something like Genshin, because then all of the execs at Netflix would be able to point over at Amazon and say, well, didn't they kind of do something like that with New World, and now no one talks about New World?
Maybe. Well, it's just going to be Dreamlight Valley, but Netflix IPs instead.
It's just short-sighted in a lot of cases. They're looking at the dollar figure more so than how do we do this properly. Like Stadia, great idea, just absolute garbage execution in terms of thinking things through. Like, how are gamers going to consume this?
Business model.
Yeah, Meta's the same way. Like,
yeah, I think
I don't know why you went that direction. And Amazon just not a good start in terms of listening to their community. Like, I think New World was a good example of like the gamers were telling you like, hey, we don't like this, this, and this throughout the beta period, and nothing really changed. I don't know. That's the trend for me in recent years, is developers being very set on like, this is the direction we're going, rather than saying like, oh, the community doesn't like that, so let's make these small tweaks and see if we can see improvement. It's kind of like, no, we're sticking to our guns.
I mean,
And
ironically,
Stadia is the best example of that.
Of a company who stuck to their guns and failed. Yeah. Because I mean, ironically, the best example that we can have of a company that didn't stick with their guns and went with what the gamers want is Epic and Fortnite. Because that the building wave fight mode of that, the primary mode of Fortnite, never got out of beta. They just dropped it. People would play it as a way to get extra V-Bucks to use in the battle royale. That was it.
They dropped the battle royale on a whim too. Like, it was just like, oh, this PUBG thing's doing pretty good, let's drop our own. And at the time I was like, wow, y'all are just trend hopping. And then I started playing, I was like, shit, this is pretty
good. But that's
good.
exactly, like, they already had enough going that they were able to see the trend and capitalize immediately. And that's just not what any of these other companies are going to be able to do, or be agile enough to adapt to.
It says a lot when they don't have any like names attached to it that I saw. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a household game developer, game director name, just somebody with some credits. Like, this is what they've done. I haven't seen anything like that either. It's like,
for the Netflix thing?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Well, I think
Uwe Boll is working on our story, guys.
From what I remember reading, the studio's in LA, right?
Yeah.
And it has the former Overwatch head Chaco Sonny.
Oh, does it? Okay.
I think so.
I mean, they bought Spry Fox, who's working on Cozy Grove 2, which is a non-violent MMO.
Well,
that's one thing that's in the hopper, I guess.
I was gonna say here, actually, legitimate idea. What if it's Squid Game?
Oh,
Squid Game.
That could also,
Squid Game : the game coming to you on PC.
But
Battle
even that,
Royale, 456 people, etc.
Even that, they're going to be so behind on the trend.
Squid Game 2's coming.
Well, they're also doing the actual Squid Games. Have you seen that?
Yeah, like the really shitty one. Yeah.
So no. I mean
Beast
Netflix. Yeah, Mr. Beast did one. But Netflix at the moment is like holding auditions and stuff to run their own Squid Games as like a
I'll
game
only
show.
watch if they actually
game.
kill people.
You signed a
Otherwise, I'm
waiver.
not
We can't
interested.
kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you die in the game, you die in real life.
Yes.
They'll get Parmalucky to help with the VR headsets.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying that could totally be an avenue, though. They want something that will quote unquote appeal to a ton of people. Battle Royale is the hottest thing right now, and one of their biggest shows of the pandemic was literally a Battle Royale, basically.
It's true.
A mini game based Battle Royale.
How about a deep genre RPG Tiger King? There we go. Like you got to get into like the
what if it's
nitty-gritty.
about it's a prison break game where you break him out of prison, rescue the Tiger King.
Oh no.
Or what if it's a monster catching RPG, but you catch all the different creatures from Stranger Things, and Vecna's the legendary.
Congrats, you earned Extinction.
We're all joking about this, but we know it's just going to be some card game, right?
Yeah. Based on what IP? Well, actually, here's a question: do we think it's going to be based on a Netflix IP, or is this going to be like a brand new thing?
It also depends on how they plan on releasing it. Is it going to be on Netflix, playable on Netflix? Because there's control ramifications to that, rather than dropping on consoles or PC.
Because it depends what version of Netflix they let you do it. Because only certain devices could do Bandersnatch.
Yeah.
So what if only certain devices can do this? But also, like, they get around it in weird ways with the mobile games that you say, hey, I want to play this game on the Netflix app. And at least for Android, it just takes you to a link on the Google Store. And then you just download the app like normal. And it's like, okay, I don't really know why I needed to click get through my Netflix app, but whatever.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. Interesting to watch. Like I say, we've had all these big companies take stabs at it. I think the only one that's been like semi-successful has been Apple, but they don't really make the games; they just provide us thing.
Yeah,
they haven't take a ton of the money.
Yeah, they haven't really ventured into that realm. But
I'd be surprised if they did. I think they know that what they've got.
I don't think they will. But
pretty good. Don't do any of the work. Take 30%.
Apple's looking at what Valve is doing, like, so you say that we don't develop video games?
Exactly. So I have two stories I would like to present to the table, and then we will discuss. God of War Ragnarok, it has become Sony's fastest selling first party game like ever, by selling around 5.1 million copies in, what is that, like 10 days?
That was a debut week.
In 1 week, 5.1 million copies, which is a lot. That's nothing to shake a stick at.
Wow, that's a lot. I wonder how long it will take for that record to be broken.
Yeah, that's almost as much as Square needs it to make money. They won't drop it now. Square wouldn't even drop God of War. It's sold enough.
Well, I think Sony was able to save money because they didn't have to deal with any fancy hair physics for Kratos.
They didn't make an engine and never use it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then in other news, Nintendo, their video game Pocket Monsters Scarlet and Violet has sold 10 million in 3 days.
I think that's the first time on podcast you have not called it the new Pokemon Red and Blue or Red and Purple, but instead you fucked up the pronunciation of Pokemon. It got me irrationally upset. I need you to know that.
Well, he put as much care into the technical sayings of words that Game Freak put into the technical things of the game.
Right. So any hot takes on Pokemon selling 10 million in 3 days and God of War Ragnarok selling 5 million in 7 days?
I think it's a funny contrast when it's like, one is literally the most popular and makes the most money of any media franchise in the world by like. You combine Star Wars and Marvel together, that's Pokemon's money. Like, of course it sells a fucking lot.
Yeah, and
of course it does.
And for comparison, like these are both the fastest selling in their respective like companies' history in terms of like just how quickly games are coming off the shelves in digital stores. Yeah, it's
pretty jarring in terms of thinking through the amount of hype that God of War has had, and even, you know, by comparison, Pokemon, but 10 million in 3 days is insane from a numbers perspective.
I think God of War has the hype because there's the fans of the 2018 game who are like, I want to know what happens next, right? But I think Pokemon is beyond hype now. I think it doesn't need hype. It's like Call of Duty, right? Yeah. It has the dedicated fan base who will always buy it every year, every 3 years, right? And then the other kind of radiant people who might pick it up the day or two after, who are like, oh yeah, my friends are getting back into Pokemon. Let me get back into Pokemon. And not to mention, like, there are a couple 10-year-olds out there, guys, who might like to play Pokemon.
Yeah, that's the most brilliant thing Nintendo's done, is they've kept it to where people our age and older are like, hell yeah, I'm buying Pokemon, and then they also grab the new generation. That's
they could literally do no marketing, zero.
I mean,
all they have to do is drop the game.
An interesting thing as well to take into account for this is that, you know, there are people who, you know, for God of War, you are going to sell one copy to one person. Yep. For Pokemon, if you say like on the Switch eShop and stuff, I think it was like $5 or $10 cheaper to buy both of them. Yeah. So that also is going to be like, I've got a mate who, you know, bought both copies, and his plan is to like play through them both. He knows what specific team he wants for both.
And then they're the exact same because they're the exact same games.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, so think about households too, in terms of like you, for example, you and your wife each have a copy.
Yeah,
right. Or
not. I'd be very interested to see like, hey, you sold 10 million copies. How many unique people were there in there? Like, are we only looking at 5 million people, and there's just been like enough people have bought 2 of them?
Yeah.
I think it's more than 5 million unique.
Oh, it would be impossible for it to be 5 million.
I'd say it's 7.75.
Yeah,
probably.
I think you guys are overestimating how many people are buying double. I think it's a lot of.
I think you are underestimating how many people.
You're telling me over 25% are buying 2. I do not believe that for a second. There's no.
It wouldn't be over 25%.
We grew up with Pokemon.
It would be like 20%.
Many of us are married. In our generation, and so we're playing with our spouses.
That's 2 different people.
That's two. You're not the same person.
I'm thinking through household. Sorry,
2 different people.
One household, but 2 people. Right? Like
I reckon 20% of people could be buying both.
That's
singularly for them alone to play through both.
Yeah. I don't think so. I would love to know the date on that, but I cannot believe that.
Yeah,
how many people? Of those people, please sound off in the comments below.
Yeah, this is how we'll do it.
Give us your reasoning.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking through like growing up. I'm sure it's very similar. It's just a bunch of friends. Like everyone makes sure they get a version or whatever, and it's that kind of stuff.
But if you can get both, and it's $10 cheaper, and you're also going to get like a steelbook and a code for an extra 100 Pokeballs in each game. Like, they definitely incentivize with bullshit digital gifts and stuff.
I'm sure that obviously it's a decent amount buy it because they wouldn't do it otherwise. But I think I don't know, more than 10% is wild to me.
In my most charitable view of it, I feel like Pokemon, right, to be like if you're really, really into it, you're the kind of person who like, oh, I got to get like these Pokemon level 100 at the best, competitive team. Oh, I got to finish the Pokedex, got to collect all 400, all 900, all 1,000 pocket monsters, right? Like, that doesn't take 20 hours. You're talking like 100+ hour commitment to one video game. And then you're telling me that there are motherfuckers out there who are like, I want to do that twice in a year.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, you've got to at least get through all the story if you want to get, to have the chance to keep the legendary of both. So that's like immediately you're going to be,
have a chance to keep the legendary? What? Please clarify.
No, I guess not.
So you
chance.
can like get the legendary and not get to keep it?
Well, you have a legendary that is your ride Pokemon that you cannot put in your Pokemon box, and you likely would not be able to like move it out into like Pokemon Home or into another game.
Got it.
So you need to do like a full clear of the game and get into end game before you can even like have one of the Pokemon.
Got it.
They're just keeping shit behind locked doors. You gotta keep playing.
It's too much work for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good for Pokemon. They're making all that money. What is that? $60 million ish, roughly, right?
Crazy.
Or is it 600 million? Right? Math.
600.
Yeah, it's also
Yep.
crazy knowing how badly the game leaked as well. How it was wholly playable online for like half a week before it was out, for it to still sell so astronomically. Fantastic for Pokemon.
So you're
Boy, does
telling me
that set a shit precedent for the idea of, if you want to sell a lot, then make a game that does not run like trash.
Well, and this is also a good argument again. Like next time Nintendo DMCA's a fan game or like piracy, be like, well, even if it got pirated, you sold 10 million, so fuck off, right?
Yeah.
But no, I agree with your second point for sure. That I think the most disappointing thing to me is that something this, like on a fundamental technical video game level, is pretty, I would say, bad, sold this much. But I also think that like there's a big contingency of people who are very casual players who like
they don't care.
They don't even think twice about it.
It's just frustrating because Pokemon and Nintendo Game Freak, they know that that's the case, and they know the product that they put out there. They did it anyway, and that's fucking bullshit.
For them to maybe have tested on hardware themselves and seen like cutscenes and some of that stuff and be like, yeah, this is good.
I've
pretty
said
crazy.
it before. It's the #1 media franchise by a fucking country mile.
Although I did see somebody tweet that they moved the game from their SD card to their local Switch storage and the performance increased dramatically.
That's interesting to know.
Which
but it's still,
makes
it's
me
like,
wonder whether it's hardware or crappy SD cards. I don't know.
Game Freak, it's still Game Freak fucking it up.
Oh yeah. You should be able to run it off the SD card. No,
I mean,
no
there's something larger because it is the world's largest media franchise. There's a whole bunch that is happening and is put in motion outside of the game development and the game dev timeline. I'd really like to see them release some patches and fix some stuff. But I mean, we know that the anime is 2 weeks away from ending for this season. We've already had Sprigatito, one of the starters, show up in an episode of the anime. So probably next week we will know the start date of whatever the next season of Pokemon is. They've got all of the plush toys to come out with. How dare they potentially have a lull in cards? They would need to have the next set of Pokemon card boxes ready to go. They couldn't send that out first, and then that spoils all the new Pokemon because you need to like experience it all at the same time. So there's probably a much larger media strategy that needs to be addressed. Like if the timeline is not conceivable, they just need to have two teams. They need to have whoever's working on the next side game, whether it be a new Let's Go game or a new Legends game or a new mystery dungeon or something else. They need to have people focusing on that, and then they need to have a core team who gets to spend more than a year developing a game.
I mean, I think Pokemon probably is the one IP that has so much going and so many threads all at once that, I mean, I can get on board with that reasoning that they're like, the wheels are in motion, we literally can't stop. Whereas for a lot of other games, it's the game. So delaying the game is fine. But in their case, if you delay the game, you delay the trading card game, the shows, the plushes, like this insane. Like, it's just crazy to think about the scope of Pokemon compared to when it first came out when we were younger.
There would be weird shit that we wouldn't even like think about how like the timing of the game getting pushed could fuck up. Like that could mess with supply chain and demand to the Pokemon Center stores in Japan.
Yeah.
Like it's a monster. It's too big.
I would legitimately love to talk to them about how they figure out the timeline, because it's not like, you know, you're releasing phase 5 of the MCU or whatever. It's like that times 10 in terms of what they're doing from a scope perspective. It's pretty crazy to think about. When we were younger, it was just, you know, the trading card game, the show, and the first handful of games. They weren't like massively different from generation to generation.
Right. And maybe like a few plushies, but nothing like so big that it is now.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I
started with 150.
None of that I could give a shit about. They have all the money in the world to solve this fucking problem, and they choose not to, deliberately not do it, because they get rewarded for not doing it. Why would they put all this effort when they make all this money anyway?
I think counterpoint, they don't see it as a problem.
Exactly. They don't.
Yeah. It's not a problem to solve. It's just not a problem.
Yep. People still buy it in this state, so it's like, well, who gives a shit then?
Yeah, there's definitely meetings. Yeah, there's definitely meetings where they sit down and go, it's like, well, like they have projection teams. They've probably got teams of like analysts that are just like, hey, if the entire game only runs at between 26 to 29 frames a second, and you're lucky when you get that rare moment of 30 frames per second, like how's that going to affect everything? Nothing? Okay, fuck shit.
Exactly.
I don't care.
Like I think the biggest or closest thing they've gotten to a slap on the wrist is this game from like the critics, right? Because I think this is the lowest reviewed mainline Pokemon game in quite a while. Like lowest scoring. I mean, even IGN gave it a 6, right? So I don't know if Nintendo or Pokemon Company or Game Freak sees that as a slap on the wrist in any way, shape, or form. I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it.
It might be the first sign where they're like, oh, maybe.
Yeah, maybe it'll spark something that it would be nice to. I don't know if they probably don't give a shit about reviews either. Because I mean, I think if you go back and look at most of the mainline Pokemon games, they're not that well reviewed anyway, for the most part, if I remember correctly.
I think
they break the 80s sometimes.
Well, I think it's consistently in the 80s from what I remember seeing on Metacritic, right?
For the Pokemon
series.
I have to look.
But yeah, no, it shows that people have started, you know, kind of voicing more that there's a larger problem having here, and I think the continued discussion around it is probably going to be good with more people. You know, it's moved out of the range of like Sun and Moon kind of ran laggy at times, but now that it's like on Switch and people are expecting more, it's not like, well, it's a 3DS. I think that probably that discussion will keep happening, and it's either going to be the games improve and they get better. We get a Switch Pro and it has enough overhead that they can just brush their technical unoptimized game under the rug, or just nothing changes. And I think if nothing changes, then people will just continue to talk more and louder.
And if they do it enough, it'll start to impact sales.
I don't think we're gonna see an impact in sales, at least not like the next game even, you know what I mean? Like, even though this one wasn't as technically well received, I still think when they announced Pokemon like Gun and Bullet or whatever, like it's still gonna sell pretty well. Yeah, it's still gonna sell, you know, like at least 8-9 mil copies.
Yeah, that's what is a sales performance
8 or 9 million. That would
when
be
you're
like
at
the
10 million sales.
10% drop.
Yeah,
you talking about 8 or 9 million in the first 3 days only,
at least. I
was say because like don't they like a poor performing Pokemon game would be like less than 20 million. Or in the 20s.
Right. And I know that Pokemon has kind of dominated this conversation a bit, but I also want to say, like, I know we framed it as like, here's God of War sales and here's Pokemon sales, but I also don't think it's a competition. Like, I don't think people at Sony Santa Monica should be like, oh, shucks. Well, maybe the next game we make should be Pocket Monsters. Kratos catches Pokemon. Let's go. Like, no, I don't think that's
down
the
for
answer.
that.
Yeah. Or he'd probably like chop their heads off or some shit.
That's how you catch them.
Exactly. That's how you catch him a ride on. I don't think that this isn't like a fail or a loss or anything for Ragnarok or Sony
Not
or
at
Santa
all.
Monica, right? Like not at all. Like still
Still a
5.1 mil.
huge figure.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly for the kind of game it is. It's not a multiplayer game.
And it's a sequel to a game, and it is such a direct sequel where I would argue that like you would be missing out a lot on the experience if you only bought Ragnarok and
Yes.
didn't play the
There's
first
a
one.
lot of context that would really enhance that you wouldn't have.
Right. And so many people were like, I need to know, like I need to buy it now. Right. So I think that's pretty great. Yeah. So not a loss for Sony. Congrats to Nintendo.
Hey guys, what do you
Yeah.
reckon Xbox's fastest selling game was, and how long ago do you reckon that was?
I mean, Halo Infinite's got a. I don't know,
Halo-
fastest ever. It's got to be
Halo-
like Halo 3,
2.
2 or 3. It's got to be Halo
Gotta
2
be
or 3.
2 or 3.
Oh, wait, can I change my answer to Scalebound?
That's cold. Too soon.
The sales are infinite on that. We're still waiting on the final number.
Yeah. Wait, Stretch, did you have the answer, or were we just
I'm
think
looking
he's
it up
looking.
too. I want to know.
No,
It's gotta be
I'm
Number
looking.
one is Halo.
Yeah, I'm seeing like
Halo
overall
2.
sales, but I have not seen like what was the
fastest selling?
best to sell in a week kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. I can't imagine it being anything other than Halo 2 or
This is
3. though.
fairly old though.
Yeah, looking
Yeah.
at this list, the list on Wikipedia for list of best selling Xbox video games, you have Halo 2, Halo Combat Evolved, and Sneak King.
That
It's
is
for those-
amazing.
Fable at number 4.
Several guys out there that have hundreds of copies. Like there's a bunch of people that just have a shit ton of Sneak Kings.
I
sitting
fucking
around.
love Sneak King, man. But
That's
yeah,
dumb.
I also think if we're talking about modern day Xbox, I think the stat they care more about is number of users in the first week, right?
Mhm.
Because if we're talking first party, it's like how many Xboxes or how many Game Pass subscriptions, how many people log on to Game Pass to play this game, right?
Yeah.
I think that's their bigger.
That's gonna start to skew the numbers for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Well,
congrats.
they gotta
Sony.
have something when they don't have any first party shit coming out.
Yeah.
It's coming someday, they say.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Scalebound is just around the corner.
Yeah,
It's just almost here.
the other Obsidian stuff's coming someday. Although Pentiment just came out and it's really good.
Yeah, I heard great things.
I haven't
about
played it
Pentiment.
yet. That's my next game. Now that I've finished Ragnarok, I'm diving straight into Pentiment.
You're not
Excellent.
excited to play Pokemon?
I couldn't.
What if
give
I-
a fuck about?
What if
Pokemon.
if I bought you Pokemon, would you play it?
No,
You want to play Pokemon with me, Otten?
no.
Come on, me. We'll get all the badges.
I
I'll
would
like.
video myself going to my local game store and turning it in for money to get something else. I would ask them for all their copies of Sneak King in exchange.
Well, on that
You have
note,
to go in the back and search deep for that one.
let's talk about games because I actually have been playing Pokemon. Stretch did not pay me for this. This is not sponsored content in any way, shape, or form.
No, he only pays for Game Pass mentions, which you didn't mention that earlier, but he paid you for that.
That's true. Yeah. So I have been playing Scarlet and Violet, specifically Violet.
You don't have both?
No, I'm one of the
Weird.
80% that don't have both.
Are you a real gamer then?
Not a real gamer, no. So I guess where I'm falling on with this game is I think this is the best Pokemon game in a long time. I do firmly believe that. I think the open world is really refreshing, and how you can just kind of like go do whatever, whenever, however is really nice. There's a lot of quality of life things, like the whole where you can like send out your Pokemon to do fights, but you don't have to do.
Yeah.
And then it just like one hit kills wild Pokemon and you get experience. It's not as much experience as like going into the battle, but so much more convenient.
Yeah.
It feels like a page out of kind of taking the convenience of Arceus and putting it into this, which is really nice. But man, it fucking sucks shit looking at it, dude.
Yeah.
I hate looking at this game, man. It's so ugly. It's really bad.
When I was talking about it with Christian when we did our kind of like post recap about it, it's just like if it was like a single location where it was bad, then that would be like, okay, I'll just like avoid that one place, whatever. But it's just everywhere consistently running at 26 to 28 frames.
I mean, like even the frames, I can survive. I'm not like a frame queen. I don't need it to be like 144 or whatever all the time. But even the textures are rough. I think the biggest mistake this game makes is in the first 30 minutes, where you go through the rigmarole of pick your starter, fight your rival who always picks the weak, like the Pokemon that's weak to yours. You beat them, and then your rival, she's like, cool, meet me at the top of this very tall lighthouse where we can look at the grand landscape around us. And you get up there, and it is depressing. It is sad to just look out on the horizon and see all of these low poly textures, and it's just very uninspiring. It looks like a 3DS game blown up to be 1080p in a very unflattering way. And it just sets a really bad tone for like, it's not going to get better than this. Like the next 30 hours you're going to spend, it's not going to look any better, really.
So you basically just do an Assassin's Creed climb to the top of the tower, and when they do the little circle, it's just unrendered.
Yeah, well,
it's an unrendered world, basically.
Yeah, you're not going to render them at like the maximum quality, right? Like, like distance and all that, right? But it just doesn't look great. It's not very inspiring. At least when you're at the top of a tower in Assassin's Creed, you're kind of like, oh, this looks kind of nice, right? Like generally, it's like, oh yeah, that looks like a city. Right.
It always looked impressive. Like it's kind of that you get up at the top and there's this impressive kind of pan over everything. And that was always like this is kind of cool. Like I can see all the way off in the distance. But if you bring that to Pokemon and it doesn't load, yeah, I could see how that'd be like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So not a good Breath of the Wild moment.
Not a great Breath of the Wild moment. No. And then there are little things where it's like, I mean, it's admittedly overall faster and better, and because of all the convenience and quality of life things, but there's still like weird hiccups. And like every time you switch out a Pokemon, it takes a while. Like it's like only 1 or 2 more seconds. So it's not that bad, but you really notice it and feel it every time, and like those 1 or 2 seconds kind of add up in the long run. And it's like, this feels like it shouldn't take this long to do it,
I think like Small Ant on launch day streamed it for like 18 hours, but his save file showed like 16 or 16 and a half hours.
Wow.
And it's just like the idea that like, yeah, if you're playing a game that's 10% slower, like it just runs 10% slow.
That's crazy.
You will lose hours.
Yeah, which is nuts.
That is pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's like so much of the core of it, the mechanics. I mean, in terms of like topography, the world is interesting. And it's like very densely packed. There's really good variety. How are you saying? Like you can catch like 40 Pokemon in the first area.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty good. That's not normal.
It's densely packed with Pokemon. I guess I'm thinking of the environment itself. It does not feel densely packed. It feels like empty fields, empty barrens, empty. Like everything feels empty.
Do you still see a lot of Pokemon running around?
Yeah.
If you're close, they don't load that far away from you.
No, I will say there's a lot that I agree with Scrappy. There's some things that I think he's moving a little bit further with. But like in terms of the game, I think that they're doing well in terms of what is there in terms of presentation. Boy, they really like wrapped the game up in newspaper, tied a shitty ribbon on it, and handed it out to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So you gave it an 8.5.
Yeah.
If the technical issues were not a thing and it wasn't stuttering, there were no frame drops or any of that kind of stuff, how much did that impact your score?
I would have given it, if it because it's kind of the entire game runs slightly slow, and you do get a little bit of change blindness to it, but it's still just so present. And at certain angles in water and stuff, it will definitely drop down to like 10, 15 frames. I think without if it like ran perfectly, no glitches, then I probably would have bumped it up to a 9. Aside from that, another issue that I had, it kind of has the same kind of issue that I had with Octopath Traveler, that by creating a world where you've got 3 large quest lines, but you won't know what order you're doing what quest line in, or where you'll be at what point in the story. Like,
Yeah.
if you do stuff out of order, you can't like happen to meet an NPC over here who drops some huge bit of lore, assuming that you know something that you would have been told at the other end of the map.
Right.
So I think that like the world is really nicely packed with Pokemon, but it's missing humans. It's missing more story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like earlier when I was kind of saying it was like empty and like kind of disagreeing with you, I think where a lot of that stems from is the human aspect, because even when you go through the towns, like the thing, like if you remember the older games, like there was a lot of like when you're going to a town, you transition and there's a loading screen, and then you're in the like the town area, and then to leave the like or the city area you would transition, loading screen, right, etc. There's none of that so far as I've encountered. You just ride right into a town, right into a city, right? Or I guess the main one, like the capital, that has like
Messagoza has a loading screen.
Yeah, but the rest so far you just ride into the town, and it's like it's all just part of the open world, right? But there are a lot of humans there that feel like cardboard cutouts. You don't really get to talk to them. Like there's a lot where just like they have a speech bubble over them, and then that's it. Some of them have a speech bubble with an arrow, and that kind of says, "Oh, you can talk to me," and I will say 3 more words after the speech bubble. So I'll say the same speech bubble with like an extra few words, and it makes them feel hollow, and it kind of feels like an unlived in kind of space. And I just did a trade where I gave someone a Pincurchin for a Haunter that transforms into Gengar, and after I did that that transaction, because her speech bubble at first was like, hey, I'm looking for a Pincurchin or whatever, right? After I did the trade, her speech bubble stayed the exact same. So I feel like I have no impact on the world either. So that just kind of helps it feel really empty, right? Yeah. And then if you go to a shop or a restaurant or whatever, there is no inside of it for most of them. It just brings up a screen, which feels very old JRPG to me. And the screen is like a really sad texture in the background, and then there's the words. It's like not even an appealing menu screen in any way. And like the sandwich shops, they're all the exact same so far. The gyms, all the exact same on the inside so far. Like they're like a big office.
Yeah, it's just a lot of Subways and Gold's Gyms.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was for me like the same kind of thing. You know, it feels like there's a lot going on, but it's all at the surface, and then the surface doesn't look very pretty. So
it's rough.
Yeah, which I don't know. It does make me sad because there's a lot about it that I would really, really like. Like I think this game would have almost genuinely convinced me, like, hey, Pokemon's kind of cool again. Like, I love that you get the legendary right at the start. Like, you can't throw it into battle, right? But like how the legendary becomes this kind of like diegetic part of the story, and you're like trying to rehabilitate it, and you can use the legendary to like get around. Like that's your ride Pokemon for the whole. And like as you do the Titan Pokemon like objectives, you're like you can start doing surf, and you can like dash, and I assume you'll be able to like fly and climb or whatever, like other movement traversal type things, right? It's like that's all really cool, and it feels like you're more connected to it in a way that I haven't felt with a lot of Pokemon games in a while. But then when you start dashing, and then it drops to like 20 frames per second, sometimes 15, because there's too much grass on the screen, it's like, this could use some more time in the oven. Just the presentation is impacting this game or my experience with the game far more than I really expected it to.
It's like it's going to be another week or two, and someone is going to make a mod that fixes background animations, because I know that they already did that for Legends Arceus. There's going to be the mod that fixes background animations. There's going to be a mod that someone's gone through and AI upscaled every single texture in the game. And then there's going to be like an unlocked frame rate mod / mod that lets you, use the full power of your PC or something. and then the game's going to be fantastic. But it's just like there's so much holding it back. You know, it's sprinting for a finish line with giant like chains on its feet that say unoptimized.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think the thing that makes me the most sad is that if this were literally any other company, I would call this game a really nice proof of concept, and I'm excited for the sequel because I hope and can believe that a lot of these problems would be fixed in the sequel. But this is Game Freak, and I firmly believe that these problems will persist in the next game. And that kind of makes me sad.
Yeah.
They should go back to 2D pixel art.
I think they've made too many steps forward to make it back. They just need to stop like taking steps forward. Like take that lateral step to get out of like the rocky rough and onto a path and like sort your shit out. Like
Take what you've got now and improve it rather than add to it.
Yeah. Take some time to look at this and say, well, how can we stop it so that when we have an interior shot of a classroom and we have main characters working at a buttery smooth 30 frames per second, that we don't have two NPCs to the side moving with a 5 frame per second like shift cycle. Like what is happening there?
Oh yeah, there was like there's one gym, I think it's the grass gym, where so every gym they have you do a gym test where you have to do some sort of mini game of some kind, right? And the gym test for the grass one is find 10 sunflora that are hiding and then bring them with you back here. And as you collect one follows you. And every extra one you collect, more of them follow you. So it gets to a point where you have 10 sunflora right next to you running at 3 frames per second while you're at 30 frames per second, or roughly. So it just looks really bad, but it's very funny. You just gotta run the troop back. And it's like that, I think, kind of exemplifies like they were okay with that because that's a clear core part of the game. Like you have to do that to beat the game, right? That
those frame drop sunflora were also in like the first trailer for the game. They definitely got better than they were in the first trailer, but they're bad.
Yeah. It's a shame. This could have been like the greatest Pokemon Red game ever, but
that's really like the biggest sentiment that I'm hearing from people is like the game's amazing. I want to recommend it to everyone, but for like that they can't because it has so many performance issues.
Look, you're gonna love it, but it plays like shit.
Yeah.
Basically,
you're gonna suffer a little, but
yeah. So it's like Elex.
Well, at least there's like some fun.
Pokemon is very Elex-like. You're right. It's pretty bad. I'm not buying it. Not buying into it. Not buying your guys' stuff.
I wouldn't recommend it. I would not.
Even if the technical issues were non-existent, I wouldn't be interested.
Yeah, I don't think you would be the target audience. If the technical issues were fine and it looked prettier and the presentation was better, I could maybe be the one to say like, hey, I recommend this game. Check it out. It's a good like first Pokemon game if you've never played them, but no. Let's talk about a game that can run in 60 frames per second, sometimes 120 even. Let's shift gears and talk about God of War Ragnarok. Just as ground rules. I know it's been 2-3 weeks since the game came out, but we're gonna talk about a new weapon you get. So if that feels like spoilers to you, probably feel free to cut off here. Bye. We will miss you. Come back when you get further in the game. We're not gonna like spoil the ending of the story or whatever. No narrative really here, just more gameplay stuff. But Otten, you've gotten the new weapon. You've rolled credits. You've
beaten the game.
Yeah. How do you feel?
Weapon. The new weapon's pretty damn cool. The lore behind it's cool. You making it is cool.
Yeah.
Kratos getting it, and he's all like, Brock is with you when you get it and make it. He's like, hey, you know how to use that? He's like, this is the first weapon I learned how to use. Yeah. Like, of course I know how to use this.
Yeah, he's a Spartan.
He's a Spartan. Yeah. He's like, duh. And of course, it's pretty rad. I forgot the name of it.
The Dropnir Spear.
Dropnir Spear. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So who is Dropnir?
It's some ring.
It's just the name of a ring. So the ring just randomly produces copies of itself. And the dwarves in it were using it to like smelt it down for gold, the copies, and that's how they constantly had material to work with. Is they just had this ring just constantly making copies of itself,
right?
And so they combined that power with this spear. So what you can do is you can use the spear and you can like throw it a bunch of times and have multiple copies of it, and then you can explode those copies. Like they'll embed themselves in the enemies, and you can blow them up.
Okay.
So you can embed like 8 or so. 8's the maximum once you upgrade it. Yeah. So you get 8 in an enemy, and then you can explode them all, and it's like it pops off like, and it's not simultaneous either. It's kind of like a firecracker almost.
Yeah, it's very satisfying. Yeah, it was always the perfect ending to some combo. You're like, that'll kill him, and then you hit the triangle. And Kratos will slam the spear down on his
you
butt.
Turn away to look away from the explosion, and then you
they just
set him off
behind you. It's pretty fucking cool.
It is.
And just the way the spear also will come into helping you get around the world is pretty rad. It was always very satisfying to see Kratos like tie a spear to a line and throw it down so you could then zip line down something. I don't know why. Like watching the spear fly through the air is like they put a little red cloth on it so it spins in the air when it's going. It's just a nice visual flair that looks very cool.
Yeah, and what I like about the spear is it comes into play, I would say, at the halfway mark. I think that's roughly like maybe a little over the halfway mark.
A little over halfway, probably.
Yeah, so you're getting it in the second half of the game. And I think the weapon is not so complicated that it feels like, oh man, I gotta relearn everything. But it's just complex enough where it's still fun to use and you can play with it. And some of the special attacks you can do with it are really cool. Like I love the one where you just throw the spear in the air and then it rains down a bunch of spears on an enemy and it tracks them as they move around the battlefield. And that's just such a cool and smart use of the fact that this is a spear that copies itself a ton of times.
Yeah, and what's so great about those, like one of them too, like one of the light attacks that you have is you just stab them a bunch of times very quickly, and it just leaves a lot of the embedded things that you can then explode later. It's very fun to use.
So does it just help with the traversal going down, or does he like use it as monkey bars to like?
Like there's certain parts where you just chuck it into some hole and it'll stick, and then he can use that to jump up onto new places or swing on it down to something or whatever.
Yeah, and there are like rocks or like big boulders that have a golden glow in them, like cracks that are golden, and you throw the spear into that, and then it can blow up the rock, and it opens up a pathway.
Yeah. Or they use it a lot later, like if you fight you fight a fuck ton of dragons in this game. They'll like land on pillars and stuff, and you blow up the pillars so they can't land on it and like shoot fire at you and stuff.
Yeah, or even some of the dragons, like they have weak points around them that glow yellow, and you like that clues in like, okay, the spear. That'll
You've got like the blue of the axe, the yellow of the spear, and then the red of the blades, I'm sure.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. I will still say though, the axe is still my favorite thing to use. As cool as the spear is, the Leviathan axe is just fucking rad, dude.
The Leviathan axe is such a high fucking bar.
It's hard to beat it. I'm sad that we never got to use Mjolnir even once, even for just a brief period. No, sorry to spoil that for everybody. You don't ever get to use it.
Does that mean that Kratos is not worthy, or we just don't know?
There's a good story reason for why he doesn't. So like I'm cool with it.
You have to see.
And I mean, a big part of the Leviathan axe is its upgrade path. Same with the Blades of Chaos. Is that kind of like just the upgrades for the spear are just like you can get more of them, or like you get the special attacks, or are there any other like really like fantastic upgrades that you're like, hey, if you are still playing and you're about to get this, like, go for this upgrade because of a reason?
I don't know, because I feel like the skill tree, like it's a skill tree, but I don't feel like you have to make choices in it because you pretty
you'll get them
quickly.
all pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, because like a lot of the skills are like when you're running and you press light attack, you'll do a dash attack, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And like all three weapons have a thing like that. They're just treated a little differently. Probably my favorite spear upgrade ability, like the one that's not like a special attack. It's if you hold light attack, you'll see, like, so you hit light attack, you do a swing, and you hold it, you'll stab it into the enemy, and it leaves a spear embedded in that.
Yeah.
And then you can upgrade that, where if you hold it down the whole time, you stab up to 3 spears in a row, and the animation and sound for that is so fucking good.
Yeah,
it's pretty nice.
Just the feeling of using the stuff in God of War, that's always one of the most satisfying parts.
Mhm.
Like, what makes the Leviathan X so great is just like one of my favorite things to do is if you hold the like strong attack and he really fucking cranks up to like hit somebody and he just hooks them on him and just fucking throws them.
Yeah,
Like that is so, every time I do it, it's so satisfying to watch because it's like he's really fucking putting some effort into this swing.
Yeah. And you like throw them far.
Yeah,
like,
they
lob
fling.
them.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And you can throw them and then do like the Kratos, like the Scorpion get over here thing.
If
Yeah,
you wanted to, if you swap to the
Hell
blades,
yeah.
you could then, or just launch yourself at them
Yeah.
and plow right at. Yeah, then the Chaos Blade is so like just insane, just how fast shit is moving all the time with them, just whipping around.
Yeah.
Yeah, because from the sound of this, and you commented as well with the axe, the foley and the weight of the weapons in God of War is something that I don't think that any game has really come close to. Like that feeling of like getting the axe back
bringing the
is
back
just it's weighty.
Is like
They
a top
somehow
3
managed-
thing in the
yeah.
game. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's so
Like, it's
fucking good.
It's good.
The sound effect every time when the fucking wood slaps his hand is one of my favorite sounds in any game.
Or also, I think the sound of the spear when you like press triangle and like slam it.
When you slam it on the ground, it's pretty rad.
That sound is pretty nice too. It's not as good as we are children talking about sounds of things hitting things.
It's
but
good.
No.
It feels good.
You're adults having a discussion.
That's right.
About the
Serious
effort
discussion.
of Foley put into a piece of art for the PlayStation 5.
Correct.
Would hit hand good.
Yes, very good.
This sound slaps.
And just the way like you summon the spear to like nothing, it's just suddenly in his hand. He's wearing a ring and it just appears.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because like it's the drop near ring is just on his hand.
Yeah, he just wears the ring the rest of the game.
Yeah, which is really smart too, because you can still take screenshots at the second half of the game and not spoil the third weapon, because like you're really not going to notice the ring.
You don't notice. Yeah, there's not
someone
checking around.
Someone checking Kratos' Insta is like, "Oh, girl, is that a ring?"
He moved on from Faye so quickly. Let me tell you something. He has not moved on from Faye. He has not. Still very much affecting him.
What's that? The dark, brooding character that loves his dead wife continues to be dark and brooding and love his dead wife?
Shocker.
I don't know if he's dark and brooding at the end, but
yeah. Well, we'll
save that.
Talk. We won't. Yeah,
Kratos has a very good. I guess so. We're not going to get into the story as much, but Kratos.
He leaves in a good place.
Yeah, he does.
He
But like
does.
just the to see his decision making, how it changes, and the reasoning for it, how it changes over these 2 games is pretty phenomenal, and how. There's nothing super complex happening, really, and it's a lot of concepts that Kratos himself has already thrown out to other people or someone has set around him. It's not like he has some revelatory thing. It's just like he has come to the realization of like, okay, this is. He really. What's great is he takes his own advice that he gives people eventually.
Yep.
Press X to fuck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
he takes that advice. Yeah. No, I think what I liked a lot about Kratos in this is that I thought that the first game I thought was like, that's his character arc, and now he's like grown and we'll see where he goes. And I was worried that this game he wouldn't have as much of a character arc and it'd be more about Atreus's.
I think it's a bigger one than the first game.
Yes, I agree. It really surprised me, especially like in that latter half where
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I can say it's one of the better written games out there. It pretty like it's a great character. Like, and even I'm thinking like the last bit, which I'm not going to say what it is. Like there's cool shit happening all around you, but there's really could character moments. Those are the memorable things. All of those, like, as cool as it is to see cool shit and effects going around and big things happening, it's these moment to moment, Kratos talking to Atreus or whatever. Like, that's when those are what's going to stick. It's really good at doing that.
I'm so excited to play. I can't wait until this crazy holiday like rush is over, so that I can just like sit down and be like, nope, no one perceive me, no one talk to me, no one nothing. I'm just gonna sit down and play God of War for 15 hours.
I knew I would like it, but I didn't know I would like it as much as I have now.
Yeah,
I think it surpasses the first one in every way imaginable that I can think of. Like, it's absurd how much better it is. Like, not in the first one's excellent, but this is just on another level of like, damn, it's so good.
And what I love too is it's not like, it is better than the first, but it's not so much better that it feels like going back to the first is like an archaic and slow whatever, right?
I imagine
like,
it'd feel pretty similar.
Yeah, it feels just similar enough where I think like if someone's totally new to these games, I'd be like, you can start with 2018, and I wouldn't even have any caveats of like, oh, it'll run at sub 30 and it looks like shit. Just play 2018 and then
it's such a great
transition right into
Ragnarok. Great little duology of games. I love both of them. I've done everything now except the Muspelheim stuff, the Crucible.
So did you complete Niflheim?
I did.
Interesting.
So
interesting. Yeah, I think Ragnarok is a very good video game. I want to know, Otton, at what point did it, like, how many hours were on the clock when credits rolled for you?
The first ones or the second one?
The second one. Actually the first one. Let's say the first one.
Well, the second ones weren't too long after the first one. I think it was 41 or 42 hours, I think.
Yeah, that was around it. I think I was like 43, 44 hours.
But I make sure I do everything on the side. Like, I'm not letting a side quest sit around. It's like, there's a bunch of moments in it where it's like, hey, you want to continue doing the main story stuff? Like, should we go meet so-and-so back here? He's like, or like, there's a bunch of shit to do around here. Do you want to do that instead? You know, we got time to kill. And it's like, of course I'm going to go do that. Like,
I'd love to hang out. What's that? Fate of the world? Or help you gather up some ingredients? Let's go check out some ingredients.
Well, but the side quests in this are like legit. Like, they are, they're not like get 10 bear pelts for me.
No, and what's great about it is that like every major character has a moment, has some story. Like, most of the side quests are about them. So you learn a lot. Like, what happens with Brock and Sindri is some of my favorite stuff in a game, because they're the, you know, the comic relief. Like, they're your R2 and C3PO, like little guys on the side. And they have, honestly, even I like Kratos' stuff. They might have, honestly, my favorite story in the game. What happens to them might be my favorite thing that happens.
Interesting.
Because it does stuff that you wouldn't expect in a game. Like, you would expect like, oh, it's going to make the easy out, like the easy story out, to be like, we want it to be, you know, people to walk away with this, but it doesn't do that. A lot of the times, like, it does the like, oh, this is probably what this person would actually do. In a situation like that, instead of let's just have everything be all happy and jolly and whatever. No. It's good stuff.
I think we should leave it there before we spoil anything.
I haven't spoiled anything.
No. But, you know, we're leaving hints, right? I think we should end it there. I think we'll probably do some sort of like Ragnarok spoiler cast of some kind, if you want to keep an eye out for that. I think this wraps this week's episode of the TechRaptor podcast. We hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please feel free to leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Share it with a friend, let everyone know, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. And please follow our socials if you'd like. We're always doing we're trying to do more interactive stuff on there, more polls, more like questions you could submit to the podcast. So if you want us to answer any questions of yours or react to anything, follow us on Twitter as long as that's still alive. We're on Instagram.
We're also on Hive now.
We're on Hive. Yeah. So check us out on all the socials, and go to techraptor.net if you'd like more reviews, features, news, etc. But if you want more of this show, we will be back next Monday, and we will see you then. Bye-bye.